Hello, welcome to fasboyRambles by Fastboy Creative. As you probably know by now, I'm Fastboy, and today I'm going to ramble on the topic of skydiving. The story is a storytelling episode, so if you're not interested in that, you can click off now. But we'll get back to the success and building wealth and so forth after this. I'd just like to sprinkle in a few of the fun stories. So I'm going to tie together today a few points that probably will be touched on in more detail in future episodes that we haven't exactly talked on yet. But I'll tell you what they are. It's going to be, paying attention, being a student of your environment, and learning from others. All right, so let's get into the story. So a friend of mine at work, and I was a younger man at that time, probably in my early 30s, wanted to go skydiving, and he had never gone, and I had never gone, and so he set up a little outing for a group of people from the office, anybody that wanted to go out and go skydiving. So, as you can imagine, most people did not sign up, but of course I did, because I thought, hey, what could be wrong with this, right? What could go wrong? Anyway, so we went skydiving, and so a group of us go over, and it took place in the middle of almost what seemed like a farm field. It was really in the middle of nowhere. It was kind of a grass strip. There was a barn at the back and a shed towards the front, and a couple of airplanes sitting there. So we arrive early in the morning for training to learn how to skydive, which essentially was going to be parachuting. It was going to be a short skydive, but mostly parachuting back to the ground. So the first thing that had to happen is we had to go through and sign, probably 10 or 15 pages worth of forms, all essentially indicating that you could die doing this and it's your own fault. So once you get through all of that, we have a little bit of a classroom session, and the pilot and the expert flight skydiving instructors and so forth give you a few hours of instruction on what's going to happen and how to manage yourself and how to get to the ground safely under the canopy of their equipment. So anyway, as class gets started, we're all having a cup of coffee, a glass of juice, whatever the thing is, listening to the instructors, and there was probably maybe 20, 25 people there, something like that. It's a pretty good group, and of course there's always got to be one individual sort of in the back of the room that's not really paying attention. So there was this, what seemed to me at the time to be an old dude, and I guess he was older. He was probably in his late 60s, might have been early 70s. And he was kind of cackling away and not really paying attention and whatnot. And of course that went out through the entire training portion. And the rest of us just, were careful and listened to what was going on. And they teach you about the parachute and how the parachute works and what the procedure is that you're going to use. And a few of the things that they really harped on is you needed to know that they were, when you got to elevation, which in this case I think was around 3,500 feet, that they were, once you jumped out of the airplane, that the instructor was going to communicate to you from the ground on a radio that they had strapped to the harness on your chest. But the first 1,000 feet or so, the radio reception was bad. So you needed to know what the first couple of instructions were on exiting the plane to make sure you did the right thing so that you could get into the zone where that you could be heard by the radios. And then any mistakes at that point were minor because they could talk you in. Well, a few of the things that they taught that were important was how to appropriately get out of the plane, how to appropriately get your chute deployed, what to do if your chute doesn't deploy appropriately, and how to cut it away and get onto the reserve chute without having trouble, how to make a turn, how to look at your altimeter. They gave you an altimeter on your wrist that you could look at, and then most importantly, when you get to the ground, how to flare the canopy parachute so that it slows down enough so that you can land on the ground. And something most people probably don't know about parachuting is, especially under a modern canopy, the rectangular style ones, your forward motion is fast. It's probably when you get to the ground level, it's probably 20 or 25 miles an hour. So there's no way that you can just reach the ground and sort of run to keep up with your parachute, right? You have to do this thing called flaring, and you have to flare your chute, which essentially changes its shape. So it's like dropping the flaps on an airplane, right? It just slows you way down, and you slow down to a point where, boop, you can just stand on the ground and, just walk along a little bit. Well, I'm going to kind of jump ahead in the story here a little bit to tell you that the first guy that went up was the cackler, the guy that was in the back of the room that wasn't really paying attention to what was going on. Well, guess what he forgot to do? He forgot to flare when he got to the ground. So everyone at the ground is hollering, flare, 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 and this guy just keeps on going. Well, anyway, he proceeded to try and hit the ground running, broke both of his ankles, and the rescue squad came and took him off to the hospital. That was how the day began. Well, it was kind of a somber crew after that. Some people maybe a little more apprehensive to go up and try it. And anyway, so the day goes on, right? And I'm watching other teams go up. I was going to be middle of the group or something like that. And there was 3 skydivers going up at a time with an instructor who was a pilot. And then, of course, there was an instructor on the ground. So 3 people were going to be jumping out of the plane one at a time, and the pilot was going to be staying in, and he was going to land the airplane. Well, it was a nice little airplane. It was a cute little high-wing Cessna. Nothing about it alarming, really, in any sense. And the way they design them is there's a little platform that they build onto the wheel on the side you're going to jump out from. So that's how you get into the plane. When you step on this and you climb up into the plane. And then when it's time for you to get out, you step out of the plane and you stand on this little platform and you hold on to the strut of the wing. And if you get scared at that point, you can ask to come back in and step right back in, and you don't have to jump. But the next step is to release your feet from off of the platform and fly like Superman in the wind. And that's to prepare for the jump. And when it's time to jump, you let go and you fly back behind the plane. And the only real thing that they tell you to watch out for is to arch your back so that you don't bang your head on the plane. And then also to be aware that there's a thing called prop wash. It's the air spinning past the prop coming across the wings, and it's kind of circulating like this, and it can cause problems. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that as we get going here. Well, anyway, then the interesting thing is you step out, you get on a platform, and if you let go and you're flying like Superman and you get afraid and you want to come back in, well, then they just shake the plane and knock you off, and then you're skydiving whether you like it or not. Well, I don't know if that happened at all. I didn't see that happen to anybody, and of course some people were worried about it. But anyhow, fast forward to my turn. So it becomes to be my turn, and my 2 mates are going to go up with me, as well as the pilot, making 4 of us in the plane. And I'm kind of excited to get into this cute little Cessna that they've been jumping out of. And well, then there's an announcement that comes. There's that plane is going to be going in for a rest and refueling, and then plane number 2 is going to be coming out. And well, I wasn't too nervous about that until I hear this sort of jalopy sounding airplane, coming up the grass strip, but it's this old clunker that the paint's all peeling off of. And it was a similar sort of plane, had the same equipment on it, that you stand on the plate and whatnot, but now I'm getting a little bit nervous. So anyway, we get into the plane, and there's the 4 of us in there, pilot in the seat, the rest of the seats are out, and everybody else is kind of sitting on the floor. And as we start to taxi down the grass strip, the pilot says, all right, well, this plane isn't as powerful as the other one, so I'm going to need you all to lean forward, get underneath the wing. Well, so if it wasn't unnerving enough to have this old kind of jalopy of a plane come out, now we all got to sort of kneel in and squat underneath the wing to get it off the ground so that the tail doesn't drag. Well, anyway, we of course do that, and we get up in the air, and it's all fine, and we're making our way up to 3,500 feet. And one of the people in my group that was going to go first was a lady who was a friend of mine from work's girlfriend, I think was what it was. And she goes to go first, so they open the door, she steps out onto the platform, gets going, lets go, does the perfect arch, and gets away from the plane, gets her chute deployed, and proceeds to go off in the wrong direction. And the first thing that they told you was the only real step you really needed to remember was once you get out of the plane, you deployed your chute, that you had to make a full 180-degree turn and head back towards the airfield. Otherwise, you were headed off into the woods. And the instructors couldn't speak to you at that time because you were out of radio range. Well, of course, she just flew off into the woods somewhere, and they needed to send a rescue team out to find her. Well, anyway, okay, so that's problem number 2, right? And so anyway, the next guy goes, he gets out without a hitch, then it's my turn. And so I get out, and of course I wasn't feeling very well that day. I had a bad cold, and my head was all stuffed up, probably shouldn't have been up there to begin with. But I just wanted to get out of that plane so I could get down to a lower elevation where my ears weren't hurting so bad. And so I step out onto the platform, no problem. Grab onto the strut, no problem. Fly, hanging, let the feet go, flying off like Superman, no problem. I just really enjoying this, and they kind of give you the 1, 2, 3, and they point like this, and that's when you let go. So of course I did that, boom, let go, did perfect arch, get my chute deployed, and guess what happens? Only person in the whole group, my chute gets in the prop wash from the plane, and the bag that the chute is in just spun, and so all the lines are all twisted up. Well, needless to say, it's a good thing that I was paying attention during that time, or I'd have been a little spot on the ground, right? So what to do? They tell you grab your harnesses, pull them apart, and then move your feet like you're riding a bicycle. And what happens is the chute stays all funky, but you start to twist, and you untwist yourself to where the chute can open. And you have about 1,000 feet or so to get that done, maybe 1,500. And if the chute doesn't then untwist the strings and open up, well, then you got to cut away the reserve chute and then pull the cut away the main canopy and then pull the reserve chute. That's a round one, and so on and so forth. Well, luckily my strings untwisted and my canopy opened up just as expected, and it was just a fantastic ride down. Really one of the most beautiful things, really, maybe that I'd ever seen, and learned how to use the steering toggles and really bank a really high turn as I would turn around and make your way back down to the airfield. It really was just a fantastic ride back down. Got to the near the ground. Of course, everybody's hollering, flare, flare, flare. Well, of course, I knew what that meant because I'd been paying attention as well as watched the guy break both ankles before that. So I got a good hard flare in there, and this landed, poop right to the ground, and it was perfect. The experience was fantastic. So anyway, moral of the story here, if we could get to the end of this tale, was jumping out of the plane and the skydiving aspect of it was great. As you've heard me say in previous episodes, I always believe that you should be having fun, and if you're not having fun, it should be because you're working towards something. Well, anytime you can combine those and get 2, 3, 4 birds at one stone, fantastic. Well, I had a great time that day, so I certainly accomplished having fun part. But the piece that may not have been so obvious was and any venture that you expect to be successful, whether it's jumping out of a perfectly good airplane or a marginal one in my case, or any other thing you're trying to do with starting your business or earning your money on your side gig or whatever it is get used to paying attention. Pay attention to the things that are going on around you, because sometimes things are going on that are important, or at least things that you can seriously learn from. So an example was how to pull the steering toggles, how to flare when you land, and what's going to happen if you don't, and that you're going to end up breaking your ankles. Of course, got to see that firsthand. Become a student of your environment. I'm up in the plane. I'm watching what other people doing. I watched the friend of a coworker, fly her canopy off in the complete wrong direction, land in the trees, and have to be rescued. Okay, well, what could I learn from that? Okay, pay attention during class. Learn that you're going to have to turn 180 degrees when you get out of that airplane. Make sure that when you get out of the airplane, you do that. Well, of course, learning and paying attention also was important when it came to, I was the only person in the class that had the string twist problem with the chute back. If I had not been paying attention during that part, I would have fallen miserably to the ground, and then I wouldn't be here telling this story now. And then, of course, lastly, the learning from others, and I don't know that I need to say too much about that, but I watched these other people in the class, and I watched the instructors, and I paid attention to what they were doing and watched what their experience was like. And a thing I could probably add to this is maybe not necessarily being the first one to jump into something, right? So if you have the opportunity to sort of sit back and do a little research and pay attention to what's going on for others that are doing something similar to what you're doing, and then maybe sort of jump in at the right time. In this case, it made some good sense for me because I got to watch the guy break his ankle, so I definitely remember not to make that mistake, and I got to watch the girl fly off in the wrong direction, so I was clear not to make that mistake. Now, the third thing with the string twist on the parachute, that really required me independently just to pay attention during class, so it's a darn good thing that I did that. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the story, and this is Fast Boy signing off.